Salakaya Chakshunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Satpitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapachubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasani Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naramachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nasta Preshu Abhadreshu Nijam Bhagavad Shevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Today, Thursday, April 23rd, 2026. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, the Creative Impetus, Chapter 4, the Characteristics of Vrishabhadeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text number 6. Yasya pandave shloka buddhaharanti Konutat karma raja share Navirand vacharit puman Apatyatam magadyasya Harishudhena karmana Konutat karma rajarsher Nabhir anvacharit puman Apatyatam magadyasya Harishudhena karmana Konutat karma rajarsher Nabhiran vacharit puman Apatyatam magadyasya Adishudena karmana Konutat karma rajarsher Nabhiran vacharit puman Apatyatam magadyasya
Konutat Karma Raja Sher.
Konutat Karma Raja Sher. Nabheran Vacharet Kuman. Apatyatam Magadyasya. Harishuddhena Karmana.
Konutat Karma Raja Sher.
Konutat Karma Raja Sher. Naveran Vacharet Kuman. Apatyatam Magadyasya. Harishuddhena Karmana. All right, the word for word. Yasya. Of whom? Indeed. Pandaveya. O Maharaj Parikshit. Shlokal. 2 verses. Udhaharanti. Recite. Who. Nu. Then. Tat. That. Karma. Work. Raja Rishehe. Of the pious king. Nabhehe. Nabi. Anu. Following. Acharit. Could execute. Human. A man. Apatyatam. Sonhood. Agat. Accepted. Yasya. Whose? Hari. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shuddhena. Pure, executed in devotional service. Karmana. By activities. Translation by His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada. O Maharaja Parikshit, to glorify Maharaj Nabhi, the old sages composed 2 verses. One of them is this: who can attain the perfection of Maharaj Nabhi? Who can attain his activities? Because of his devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead agreed to become his son. And the next verse, number 7, will be the next of those 2 shlokas, recited by the unknown old sages who are not mentioned in the Sanskrit, by the way, but Prabhupada knows who they are. So please repeat, O Maharaj Parikshit.
O Maharaj Parikshit.
To glorify Maharaj and Nabhi, the old sages composed 2 verses. One of them is this: who can attain the perfection of Maharaj and Nabhi? Who can attain his activities? Because of his devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead agreed to become his son. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The words Shuddhena Karmana are significant in this verse. If work is not carried out in devotional service, it is contaminated by the modes of material nature. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Yagyartat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha. That's 3rd chapter, text 9. Activities performed only for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord are pure and are not contaminated by the modes of material nature. All other activities are contaminated by the modes of ignorance and passion, as well as goodness. All material activities meant for satisfying the senses are contaminated. And Maharaj Nabhi did not perform anything contaminated. He simply executed his transcendental activities, even when performing yajna. Consequently, he obtained the Supreme Lord as his son. Yasya pandabheya shloka udhaharanti konutat karma rajarsher nabher an avacharet kuman apatyatam magadyasya Adi Shudhena Karmana. O Maharaj Parikshit, to glorify Maharaj Nabi, the old sages composed 2 verses. One of them is this: who can attain the perfection of Maharaj Nabi? Who can attain his activities? Because of his devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead agreed to become his son. Mukum karoti bachalam hangam lagayate girim Tatkripatamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Paramamandamadavam. In terms of the context of Vedic culture, it is very useful. It is actually required to have old sages in the communities. We do not know who these old sages were, but obviously they were present in the court of Maharaj Nabi, and who then gave the kingdom over to his son, Rishabhadev, who is the Supreme Lord himself, appearing as the son of Maharaj Nabi. So, although this chapter is about Lord Rishabhadev, still Maharaj Nabi is glorified, because how does one get to have the Supreme Lord as his son? What kind of devotee is that? That's some special devotee. Who could have that kind of perfection? Who could perform his activities? Because of his great devotional service to the Lord came as his son. So that's a wonderful verse. And that is something which in the beginning days of our movement, we did not really have old sages in our communities. We had mostly very young men and women, and there was only one old sage, Srila Prabhupada himself. But he is no ordinary old sage, although coming in his elderly years to preach Krishna consciousness successfully all over the world. But he is an unprecedented acharya. Acharya mam vijaniyam navamanyeta karhachit namartya bhudyasuyeta sarva deva mayo guru. This phrase, sarva deva mayo guru, means sarva deva, all the demigods. He is the summation or the manifestation of all the demigods, Sarva Deva Mayo Guru. And thus, he should be respected and not envied, for he is not an ordinary human being. That is a verse from the 11th canto. So, Srila Prabhupada, he was the only old sage present, but what an unprecedented devotee and preacher he is. And if you examine coming in the line of disciplic succession, you have several in a row very extraordinary personalities, beginning with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who single-handedly revived the Krishna consciousness movement, which was dormant at that time in the 19th century. But somehow or other, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was such a great devotee that he really himself understood and manifested the full and revealed the full import and meaning of the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which, although there were Vaishnavas here and there who were following in the line, in the disciplic succession, but the current was not apparent, was not visible. Just like there's one river in India called the Palgu River. So the Palgu River, you cannot see it on the surface of the earth. It's underneath. So you have to go down inside. You have to stick your hand way down in the dirt, and then you will find it is wet. That's called the Palgu River. And there is one verse where Sri Rupa Goswami explains about immature renunciation or false renunciation, where it says, Vairagyam Palgu Katyate, that when one is not attached to anything for sense gratification, but is simply interested in the service of Krishna, that is real renunciation. But one who rejects material things or rejects things thinking them to be material and doesn't use them in the service of Krishna, then that renunciation is incomplete. Vairagyam Palgu Kachite. It has it's surface renunciation. It has no depth. So real renunciation means to engage everything in Krishna's service without attachment. Anasaktasya vishayan. Rupa Goswami says, Anasaktasya. Shakta means attachment. Anasaktasya, without attachment. Anasaktasya vishayan. Vishaya means sense gratification. Anasaktasya vishayan, without attachment to sense gratification. One accepts everything for the service of Krishna, utilizing his body, mind, and words, and all the material energy as well in the service of Krishna. Even the turkey is engaged in the service of Krishna. Well, how is a turkey engaged in serving Krishna? He's just, over there, right? Every time a big noise comes, he makes his declaration of turkeyhood. But he is also engaged in the service of Krishna because he is taking prasad. And he is seen as entertainment and beauty, actually, in his own kind of far out way, to attract people to Krishna consciousness. He's actually preaching. The turkey is a preacher because people come, they take prasadam, they see, oh, how cool is that turkey? And you hear all the time, especially these ladies come up to him, I love you, Sufi. One lady loves him so much that she took him to the vet and paid the vet bill. Of course, she was a little bit of a meddler. But anyway, so that is her Agyata Sukriti, unknowingly engaging in Krishna service by serving Sufi, by loving and serving the great white tom turkey. It's extraordinary, actually. You think about it. And that is Krishna consciousness. Because we're not attached to the turkey for sense gratification. And there have been several instances in which people have expressed their desire to enjoy the turkey for their sense gratification. One of whom is the associate of our air conditioner repair guy, Rohit. His associate is an American guy. He was looking at the turkey and going, that would be good on my dinner table. And similarly, I sent a picture of the turkey to one of my brothers, who formerly had actually been chanting 16 rounds at one point in his life and a vegetarian, but that's all out the window now. And he saw the picture of the turkey and he goes, Thanksgiving. It's like, how far you have gone from that 16 rounds and that abstention from the most gross sinful act of eating meat. So Rupa Goswami is telling us, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjitaha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchite. Real renunciation is when one accepts everything as belonging to Krishna and using it for Krishna's service without having personal attachment to any sense gratification in the whole bargain, in the whole deal. Now, it is a fact that as we engage the material energy and use it to serve Krishna, then some sense gratification comes in different ways. For example, having a nice place to stay that is Krishna's property. So that has a kind of a sense gratification, right? But taken in the spirit of devotion to Krishna, it is not sense gratification. Actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that all types of material facilities should be offered to the Vaishnavas who are engaged not only in Krishna service, but especially in preaching Krishna consciousness. They should have all facilities, and he himself would do that sometimes. Sometimes he wore some patent leather shoes. He was engaged in preaching to some of the Illuminati in Bengali society in Calcutta, and they would ride in their yachts, their motor launches up and down the Ganges, and he would preach to them. But he very much embraced and embodied this principle of being unattached, and he was a very detached personality, very detached, not frivolous, very serious, and very much interested in spreading and preaching Krishna consciousness, which he did all over India and Burma and Bangladesh. Of course, that time Bangladesh was part of India. It was East Bengal, but later on it became East Pakistan and then Bangladesh. Bangla means Bengali, Desh means a place. So it's the place of the Bengalis. And there are many associates of, we were hearing from Devaki Mataji, there are many associates of Lord Chaitanya who appeared in Bangladesh, because at that time it was, West Bengal and East Bengal. It was kind of all one, like, North Carolina and South Carolina. Only more homogeneous culturally, you could say. And then later became a Muslim place. But there are still many temples there. And she was explaining that in many ways, the culture of Vaishnavism that's there in Bangladesh is more pure than anywhere, because of the contamination of the greater society of Muslims. They've had to protect that culture and nurture it in little pockets of little places, various temples, etc. And so it's actually remained preserved. They have protected themselves, whereas in West Bengal, the greater influence of the outside world is more manifest. And Bangladesh is one of the most crowded places on earth. There's a couple of places that are the most crowded places on earth, most inhabited, most people per square kilometer. One of them is Bangladesh. And the other one is Uttar Pradesh, UP, the state of India where Srimad Dham is located. That is a very highly densely populated place. So that makes Hindi one of the most spoken languages in the world, amongst the top 5 spoken languages in the world, simply because by sheer numbers, by sheer volume of number of people. So that is a wonderful instruction of Rupa Goswami, exhibited by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that everything is meant for the service of Krishna without attachment. And there was one instance, it's in the Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava book by Bhakti Vikas Swami, in which Bhaktisiddhanta came into Sri Vrindavan. This is in the 1930s. There were no cars in Vrindavan at that time. I think there was one car there in the 1970s when Prabhupada opened the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Just one car in the whole town. Now forget it. It's crowded and packed, traffic. Very urbanized, but it was a kind of a sleepy place. Little village full of Vaishnavas only. So Bhaktisiddhanta came riding into Vrindavan in a what would have been at the time a high-powered sports car, convertible, open top. And he was sitting in the front seat, and in the back were two sannyasis sitting on top of the back of the car, like they do sometimes in parades, like the beauty queen will ride in the back of the car and wave at everyone. Like that, two sannyasis wearing three-piece suits, three-piece wool suits, British suits. And what a shock that was to the residents of Sri Vrindavan Dham. But he is demonstrating the principle of Yukta Vairagya. And then he also started the highly organized and well-attended parikrams of Sri Vrindavan Dham that are done during Kartik. He was highly organizing parties with tents and all prasadam. They would set up camp in one place, and then all the attendees would go on pilgrimage that day. Then they would move the camp to the next spot, all tents in the backs of trucks. They had cooking and all this arrangement. And Srila Prabhupada himself attended that parikram. I believe it was in the year 1932, if I'm not mistaken, after he took initiation, maybe 1933. And so he came to the parikram, and that evening there was going to be an organized parikram to the Sheshayi Vishnu temple, and most of the pilgrims were going. But also Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was going to be speaking in one of the tents. And just a few people stayed back to hear him speak, mostly his inner group of sannyasis. But Srila Prabhupada said, "What will I see at this Sheshayi? Let me hear Guru Maharaj speak." So he sat down, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was speaking Krishna Katha to the small group in the tent. And then gradually, one by one, the different sannyasis, they had to get up and go and attend to their different duties, which I can relate to. That's usually what I do during class. Take care of this, take care of that. So it was a very small group. It got smaller and smaller. Yet our Srila Prabhupada, he remained sitting there, hearing. Well, this is right before he was initiated. That's right. It must have been 1932. And he stayed the whole time. And he said, sometimes I couldn't even understand that exactly everything that Guru Maharaj was, the concepts he was explaining, what he was talking about. Yet I remained and I listened. Then, not long after that, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came to Allahabad, where Prabhupada had his Prayag pharmacy. And Prabhupada was very active in the local Gaudiya Math. I think it was called Rupa Gaudiya Math, because Rupa Goswami had received from an instruction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag. So the Rupa and Srila Prabhupada was very active in the programs, and he was an accomplished mridanga player, which was highly appreciated by the brahmacharis of the Gaudiya Math. Although he was not a brahmachari, he was a householder. with his wife and business, and his father was living with him. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came to visit that center, and then Srila Prabhupada was recommended by the local temple authority, whose name was Atulananda Brahmachari, with whom Srila Prabhupada was very good friends. And he was recommending this Abhay Babu is such a good devotee. He's helping us in so many ways. He's so expert at engaging other businessmen and bringing people to the math. And he's playing the mridanga, and he plays the harmonium, and he sings. He's so expert. And therefore, we want to recommend him for initiation. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, you do not have to recommend him. I have already marked him. He likes to hear. He does not go away. And that was from the Vrindavan Parikram. And again, Srila Prabhupada went to Vrindavan Parikram and took his son with him. I believe it was the year 1935. I could be mistaken on the dates, because I haven't studied that recently. It's in the Lilamrita. And he was walking along the banks of Radhakund, which is the most sacred place in the universe, with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And there was a picture of him there, and he's holding the hand of his son, whom Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had presented a bandi jacket, a Buggle bandi jacket, the kind that ties in the three places on the side. He had given that as a gift to his son. And Srila Prabhupada's walking with Bhaktisiddhanta, talking with him, holding the hand of his son, who's kind of like, looking over the water, maybe trying to go off on his own. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati confidentially told Srila Prabhupada, who was not a member of the management of the Gaudiya Math, he was not one of the leaders. He said, Algun Jwalbe, there will be fire in the Gaudiya Math. He says, ever since we've acquired this big marble palace temple in Bug Bazaar, there has been infighting amongst the devotees. Who will get this room? Who will get that room? I will get this room. No, I want that room. They're jousting each other for the utilization of the facilities. He said, when we were living at Altadanga, which is now, that building is in the hands of ISKCON, number 1 Altadanga Junction, where Srila Prabhupada first met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati on the roof of the building in the 1920s, 1922. As a young man, at that time, Prabhupada, 26 years old. The first time him and his friend Narendranath, or as he called him, Naren Babu, they met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati on the roof of that Altadanga Junction. And that was the first Gaudiya Math temple opened by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in Calcutta, which he hid after his father passed away and his spiritual master passed away. He was engaged in chanting 1 billion names of Krishna. Took him 10 years to complete that vow. And then when Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Gaurikishore Das Babaji left this world, he initiated himself into the sannyas order. Do not imitate. As they say, do not try this at home. He sat down in front of a picture of Gaurikishore Das Babaji, and he initiated himself into the sannyas order. There were several points to be noted in this connection. First of all, he had studied all the procedures that are practiced in the Ramanuja Sampradaya in South India, where there was current sannyasa initiation going on. In Bengal, there was nothing like that. There were no Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyasis. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, those who were highly advanced and renounced, would just simply take the Babaji order of life and not preach, but just chant. But specifically, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, having imbibed the mood of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, wanted to preach vigorously Krishna consciousness. And therefore he deemed it appropriate to take sannyas. So he knew all the procedures, all the mantras, everything, how to take sannyas, which practically no one in Bengal knew, but he knew. So he initiated himself into the sannyas order of life. And the next day, he went to Calcutta and opened the Gaudiya Math. Started his mission the very next day. Extraordinary. This is extraordinary history. It's just, if you think about it, it's like, you couldn't make this up. You couldn't write a book or a novel that had this kind of plot line. It's just too transcendentally extraordinary. And that first place was the Ultadanga Junction building, number 1 Ultadanga. And he said, when we were living at Ultadanga, if we could collect 200 rupees, then we were very happy, and the preaching was going on. But one devotee had donated these and built the temple at Bagh Bazaar and given it to the Gaudiya Math. Our Ananta Prabhu knows that whole story quite well. He knows the gentleman's name. I can't remember. So when we were living at Ultadanga Junction, we could collect a couple hundred rupees and we were preaching and everything was very good. Everyone was very happily engaged. But now we have this big temple and they're fighting over who gets what room. And the temple was very nice. Big, well-lit, airy rooms, it's described in the Lila Rita. So he said, I had a desire to print books, and it would be better to sell the marble off the walls of that temple and use the money to print books. That's a very radical thing to say. Of course, we don't have any marble on the walls to sell here. You sell the stucco off the walls, you're not going to get much. The bricks. Better to sell the marble off the walls and use the money to print books. And then he turned to Srila Prabhupada. This is right on the banks of Radhakund, 1935. If you ever get money, print books. And the Lilamrita describes how Srila Prabhupada felt those words deeply enter into his being. And then later on, he began his translation and commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. But at some point, that manuscript was also stolen. Some suspect his wife, because there was a system of barter where you could take something, put it on the scale, and trade it for something else of equal value. In her case, it was tea biscuits. And Srila Prabhupada was not pleased with his wife drinking tea. He would be having programs downstairs in the house, and she'd be upstairs with the kids drinking tea. And then finally, when Srila Prabhupada wanted to finish up the whole business of his household life, he told her that this tea drinking has to stop. So either the tea goes or I go. And she didn't take the threat very seriously because he was always coming and going for business and for preaching. Sometimes he was gone. They had a house in Calcutta. He'd be in Bombay organizing the Bombay Gaudiya Math. So much so that the leaders of the Gaudiya Math told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he should be our president. He is the most important, and he is so expert at collecting donations and bringing people, engaging people. And Bhaktisiddhanta says, you don't worry about him. He doesn't have to live in your company. Prophetic words. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is generally accepted as Trikalagya. Trikala means the three faces of time, past, present, and future. And Gya, like the word Jnana, Gya means knower. So one who's Trikala Gya, he knows past, he knows present, and he knows the future. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was not only a great astrologer who could predict the future and who knew the future, but he's an empowered personality with Krishna Shakti. And so he knew, he could foresee what Srila Prabhupada was going to do in preaching Krishna consciousness all over the world. So he said, don't worry about him. He doesn't have to move into the temple. He doesn't need to move in. He'll make his own temple. He'll make his own temples all over the world, which he did. So someone who is Trikalagya is very a rare person. There are different categories of rare persons. One of them is Trikalagya, someone who knows. In India, they call an astrologer Sarvagya. Means he knows everything. He looks at your palm. Oh yes, you'll live this long. This will happen. This heartbreak. This will go in your life, and at age such and such, this will happen, and then that will happen. He's called Sarvagya. He can look at your chart, and he knows everything about you. What your mentality is, what you're good at, what you're bad at, what kind of tribulations you'll suffer in your life, what kind of victories you will have, everything. Sarvagya. That's the astrologer. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was no ordinary astrologer. He's a true Sarvagya, a true Trikalagya, extremely rare. But he is an empowered devotee. So much so that when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living in Jagannath Puri, he was praying to Krishna, send me someone to help me. I'm overwhelmed with this publishing, printing, writing. Send me someone to help me. Someone from your own staff who can really preach Krishna consciousness. And then the answer to that prayer was the child Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his body like a Brahmin thread. And it left a mark on his shoulder, which he bore throughout his life. So that's extraordinary. Born with a Brahmin thread, umbilical cord. And then when he was a few months old, during the Ratha Yatra, the Ratha Yatra procession stopped in front of the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had a house on Grand Road there. And he was also the district magistrate, the most important man except for the king in Jagannath Puri. And the cart would not move. It didn't move for 3 days. How is the Ratha Yatra going to go on? Imagine we're doing Ratha Yatra, Day of the Dead parade, and the cart won't move for 3 days. You know, all the traffic problems, the police, the news camera, and the crews, and somebody just closed the door. So at that time, the mother of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, she brought the child out, and because she's the wife of the district magistrate, she went up on the cart and placed Bhaktisiddhanta, the infant, in front of Lord Jagannath. And the garland fell down from Lord Jagannath onto Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. A sign from God, if ever there was one. So in this way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur understood, this is it. This is what I was praying for. And then it turned out to be the most extraordinary Vaishnava. Yeah. So we have this succession of extraordinary Vaishnavas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who not only Bhaktisiddhanta, when he was a child in school, he wasn't interested in the school books. He liked to read the books of his father, the books of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he was like super intelligent. There's a picture of him when he was a little boy, and he's got this big head, like super brain, eidetic memory, It means he never forgot anything. He knew everything he ever saw or heard. He knew he had instant access to that, including every word of every book that he ever read. And he read a lot of books. And he was very proficient in Sanskrit. And by the time he was 7 years old, he had memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita, all the 700 and something verses. And he could quote each verse and then give a purport. In other words, he could give Bhagavad Gita class on the verse at age 7. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. But actually, there was this one in central New Jersey, and I saw her give a class on video of her giving a class on the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And at the time, she was 12 years old. She's probably close to 20 now. I don't know whatever happened to her. But she was given this incredible class at age 12, quoting Gita verses, among beasts, I am the lion, in reference to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati being known as Acharya Keshari, or Singha Guru, the lion guru. And she was quoting all these different verses and making these philosophical points with great focus and attention and perfect clarity. A 12-year-old girl. What are most 12-year-old girls doing or thinking about? God forbid. But we also see the one Odishan family that has the 2 daughters who dance. The younger one, she's 12 years old, 6th grade. And she does this Odishan dance, which is following in the footsteps of the Devadasi temple dancers from Jagannath Puri. And it is not like a Bollywood dance. If you ever watch her, what's her name? Oheli? She, it's very subtle movements and mudras, and also expressions, facial expressions in the eyes. When she did they learned a Shringa dance, she did this thing, like at her tongue. It was really great. But when you talk to her and see the poise, the sophistication of a 12-year-old girl doing this dance, there's some extraordinary devotees in our movement. Prabhupada said the demigods are lining up to take birth in this movement, because the process of Harinam Sankirtan, the Yuga Dharma of chanting the holy name, is so wonderful that they want to come and participate. Just I was in Dallas with our good friends, the Mayapuris, and the way they perform kirtan, and they're not young boys anymore, they're all 40 years old, 40 and above, but they're acting like 16-year-olds in terms of their youthful energy. They're so possessed by Shakti, Krishna Shakti, and so imbued with the bhava of Krishna Prema that is a result of engaging in continuous Harinam Sankirtan. They're empowered. So I suspect they must also be demigods who have taken birth in this movement in order to preach the Yuga Dharma and to engage in that Yuga Dharma. For me, the experience was extraordinary to see them so empowered. And that was spoken by Vallabhacharya in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to Lord Chaitanya. Kali Kalar Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan. Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Dharmavartana. That in this age of Kali Kalar Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan. The Dharma of the Yuga is the chanting of the holy names, the congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tar Pravartana. No one can spread the Sankirtan movement unless they are empowered by Krishna Shakti. So indirectly, he's indicating that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, who has come to spread the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy names. Krishna Shakti. Not only he's Krishna Shakti, but he's Shaktiman. He's the possessor of the potency. There's the potency, the Shakti, and there's Shaktiman, the person who possesses the potency, who possesses the energy. So who possesses Krishna Shakti? Krishna himself. That is, he is the possessor, the owner, and the controller of all energies, but specifically of his own internal spiritual potency. So that was an experience somewhat like that. And they engaged thousands of people in chanting and dancing along with him. It's not like a spectator sport. Even there's one Mataji there, a Prabhupada disciple. She's very old, and she doesn't get around so good, and so she has a walker, and then she sits in the walker. And during their kirtan, she was right up in the front of the stage, and her arms up in the air, chanting along the Mayapuris. Very, probably 80 years old, or at least, with a look of complete bliss and abandon on her face. So that is the nature of the Yuga Dharma. And I wrote something here. Because Prabhupada quotes in this verse, the Yagyar Tat Karmano Nyata Loko Yam Karma Bandhanaha, that work has to be performed in this world. So that work should be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, if you perform work and you don't do it as a sacrifice for Vishnu, then you become entangled in that work, in the karmic results. Darartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. By doing that work for Krishna, then mukta sangha, you become liberated from all bad association, or in other words, freedom from entanglement in karma. And that same phrase, mukta sangha, is mentioned in the 12th canto. Kaler doshanat he rajan astyako mahanguna kirtanareva krishnasya mukta sangha parambrajet. And that verse explains that Kali Yuga is like an ocean of faults, not an ocean of water, not an ocean of nectar, not an ocean of milk, but an ocean of bad qualities. However, that Astyako Mahanguna, there's something really fantastic. There's a great thing, Mahaguna, a great quality. The Kirtanareva Krishnasya, simply by chanting the holy names, Mukta Sangha, one becomes liberated. And not only Mukta Sangha, Parambrajet, you can go back to Godhead. That's like, yay, liberated from all bad association and go back to Godhead. Sign me up. That's the deal that I want. So any intelligent person should. And I wrote this little paragraph here that unless one is specifically trained up in performing devotional service, one will naturally and instinctively act for sense gratification. That will keep him entangled in the modes of nature and lead him to repeated birth and death, endlessly rotating in various bodies under the actions and reactions of the laws of karma. So, in the purport of one verse, Srila Prabhupada writes, it is impossible, actually I believe it's the disciples of Prabhupada, purport to the Kaler Dosha de Heyarajan verse of the 12th canto. It is impossible to overestimate the importance of chanting Hare Krishna. So we cannot wildly exaggerate the glories of chanting Hare Krishna because they are unlimited. And therefore, that's what we should do. That's how we should dedicate our lives. And not just sitting around all day chanting, but also working for Krishna. Assisting in the activities of Krishna consciousness to the best of our ability and availability that we can do. All right, stop here. Questions, comments, realizations? Yes, Damodar.
Mayapuri dancers you were talking about, were they
No, the Mayapuris.
Mayapuris? Were they the ones that traveled with Bhakti Sarup Damodar?
No, that's the Manipuri
Oh,
dancers.
okay,
from
okay.
Manipur.
Different.
These are second generation devotees who went to Mayapur Gurukul.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
The two Rico brothers, Bali and Kish, and then Vishwambar Sheth, the son of Bhadradas. And they all went to Gurukul, and they're all expert musicians, expert mridanga players, expert singers. They do a mridanga dance as part of their presentation, 3 of them, 2 on mridanga and 1 on whoppers. And they do all these moves and play these beats. It's beautiful and entrancing to watch. Very entertaining. And that's like a little sideshow they do in addition to their chanting of the holy names. Yeah, Mayapuris, not the Manipuris. The Manipuri dancers have not returned to America since the passing of Bhakti Swarup Damodar, who brought them. And they were fabulous also. So beautiful. And the way they do Krishna Lila is so beautiful. The way they portray the gopis dancing with Krishna. All right. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.